Well, why don't we get started, everybody? Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Fletcher Harper with Green Faith, and I'm joined by Marcia Annenberg of 350 NYC. It's great to have you all with us for this webinar on the vigils that we're helping to get planned during the first 100 hours of the new administration. And what we'll do is tonight is talk through briefly the rationale for this, talk about the People's Climate Movement, which is the coalition movement out of which this has emerged. Marcia is helping lead the planning of a vigil that's going to be taking place in New York City, and we thought that it would be really, really helpful and inspiring for you all to hear about how the inspiration for that came to her and others, and the kind of planning process that they're engaged in, so that everybody can have an example of what that looks like. And then we'll share a screenshot of some materials that we've got available on the web, and then have time for some questions. So that's the agenda. So let's jump right in. And I think the first question is sort of the who behind this, and I think the most important thing out of this is to recognize that as I said a moment ago, this is an expression of the People's Climate Movement, which is a really fantastic multi-sector coalition of environmental, labor, faith, environmental justice, student, racial justice, economic justice, and other organizations that have come together. First came together in 2014 around the planning of the People's Climate March in New York City, and have stayed together. There was a People's Climate Movement Day of Action last year, and over the past year, the People's Climate Movement has been planning and envisioning the importance of stepping into action and mobilizing as many people as possible at the time of the new administration, and obviously with the election results and the threats that they pose to the environment, to God's creation, the importance of that is even greater. And we'll say more about the People's Climate Movement later on, but as I said, I think that the important thing to know is that it really stands for a holistic approach to addressing climate change that's about creating good jobs, that can help lift people out of poverty, that's about recognizing the importance of protecting frontline communities, because as we all know, they suffer climate change's worst impacts, and really looking at climate change through the lens of racial and economic justice. For people on this call, the question of why these vigils is probably not something that needs too much coverage. But obviously we want to be public in these vigils because of our moral commitment to protecting the earth and protecting vulnerable communities. We want to do these vigils because over the last several years there has been very important progress made. The Paris Climate Agreement, the Clean Power Plan, although that's on hold in the courts, important initiatives at the state and local level across the country. Those are things that we care about, that we're proud of, that we believe represent not just political but moral advancement. And that's a second reason. And then, unfortunately, with the election, there are a number of negative reasons that we need to come together that represent a real concern. The president-elect's denial of climate change during the campaign, in many cases, the anti-environmental views of the new Congress, and the anti-climate positions, public positions of key nominees, the nominee for the Environmental Protection Agency, for the Secretary of State, and the Department of Energy, among others. We also want to lift up concern about the anti-worker views that the nominee for the Department of Labor, the head of the Department of Labor, have espoused. So there are, unfortunately, a lot of reasons that we have that we need to go public, and we want to go public firmly and with a very clear sense of moral purpose, and right at the very, very start. I think, again, most of you on this call are aware that on April 29th, right towards the end of the first 100 days of the new administration, there is a major mobilization with an anchor action in Washington, D.C., and then distributed actions taking place in different places around the country. But we didn't want to wait 100 days to show how much we care. And so the idea emerged of taking action during the first 100 hours. And these 100 hours, these vigils taking place are part of a larger collection of actions that the People's Climate Movement is organizing that'll take place during the first 100 hours of the new administration. And so the what in our particular case is a series of multi-faith vigils, and our goal is to see if we can find ways to support and help catalyze 100 multi-faith vigils during the first 100 hours of the new administration. We know that multi-faith is easier in some parts of the country than others, but we also know that we are a diverse country and that multi-faith collaboration really is possible wherever in an awful lot of places. And so we're hoping that these vigils represent that. Obviously, these vigils are to be peaceful. They are to affirm our positive vision and our commitments, and they are to raise legitimate and genuine concern about the signals that the new administration and new Congress have been sending. And they need to demonstrate that we are committed to resist steps that would do harm to the environment. So that's the very quick overview. And Marcia, I think now would be a great time if you would share a little bit about the inspiration that you had around this, and perhaps describe to folks the convening and the planning process that's gone on so far in New York around this. It would be great for folks to hear that.
Thank you so much for letting me join you. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm so thrilled to be part of this initiative. And the inspiration was the struggle at Standing Rock. I was so amazed by what went on there, and so proud of the people who fought for the water. And so it led me to think about Indian theology. And I started reading documents from Indian faith. And one of the things that really struck me, I read something about treat the earth well. It was not given to you by your parents. It was loaned to you by your children, which is so true. Like everything we do today is going to affect our children. How do we protect the earth for them? And when you're up against odds, like we're up against now, I was thinking like, well, who in history has like had these kind of odds? And I was thinking of Gandhi, because Gandhi was able to arouse an entire country to liberate India from British rule, and he did it so peacefully, and it was really grassroots. So the idea is to do this peacefully and to do this, across the country and to join together. And I like the idea of multi-faith. I also like the idea of, no faith. I was talking to some people who are part of ethical culture who have a different kind of idea of what faith means. So I'd like to reach out to really everyone, no matter what their faith is or their spirituality is, to be part of this movement. And we had a terrific meeting in New York earlier in the week. And we've been thinking about, do we want to do this on Inauguration Day on the 20th, or maybe a couple of days later on Sunday, because the Women's March is Saturday. There's a lot of events going on at the same time. And since Friday is also the Sabbath, people who might be from the Jewish faith may not be able to do the vigils because they can't travel. So we're a little bit thinking about which day we really want. And then a lot of people had different ideas about where the vigil should take place. So Central Park is a great meeting area in New York City. And some people wanted the reservoir, which is the large body of water. And others of us want the pond by Central Park, which is more centrally located. Other people wanted a bridge action to meet across the bridge, New Jersey and New York City. Other people wanted the Brooklyn Bridge. So we're talking about all these like variables, but we're very committed to making something happen within that first 100 hours. And we got off to a really good start this past week.
That's great, Marcia, and that's that I really appreciate it. We wanted folks to hear how things are going literally in process, because I think for a lot of folks, obviously this is short notice to think about planning something, and I really appreciate your sharing that. Could you say a little bit about what's your sense of how folks have been reaching out to find other potentially interested friends or colleagues with this? Say a little bit about that, just so folks get a sense of how that's going.
What we realized going around the table is that we're all from such different faith backgrounds. There was a Buddhist at the table, there were Catholics, there were Presbyterians. I'm from the Jewish faith. It was very exciting, and we're all going to reach out to our congregations and try to mobilize people to, be more in touch with each other. And they at these times call for really reaching out. It's such a dangerous time. And, just the thought of they're making a list of scientists, it's kind of mind-boggling. You can't imagine it's actually happening in our time. It's so overwhelming, and we really need each other more than ever to have a sense that we're not going to let something terrible happen.
That's great. And again, folks, as you're listening to this, like Marcia said, I mean, the way that the way to get started with this is to think about who are your friends, who are your neighbors, who are people that you know in your community, and just to reach out to them. I mean, some of you are experienced faith organizers, others may feel new at this, but our sense is that people will be responsive to this, and that there's a really important contribution that faith groups can make. What I'd like to do now is to give let's see, let me try now shifting the screen here and pulling up the website so we can show you a little bit about the kinds of resources that we've got. So, whoops, new share. Okay, so here's, and I should say this is just temporarily on the Green Faith website. The materials will be moved to the People's Climate Movement website very quickly, and we'll send everybody the link to that, and I'll share that link in just a couple of minutes. But we've got Vigil materials, and so just to give you a sense of what's available. So the first thing that we're doing is we're making it possible for people to indicate that they're interested in helping organize a vigil in their community. And so if people click on this, there's the link, and you can just do that. And what we will do with that information is we'll connect people up. If there are 3 people in Chicago, or 5 people in Detroit, or 6 people in Miami, or whatever, we'll make sure that you get connected up so that you can make common cause and work on stuff together. The next thing, and we'll be adding some different resources, but there's a set of sample prayers and statements that you can read that's in PDF form. So again, sort of very easy to download. It's 15 pages or so. So it's more than you're going to want to use, but it gives you lots of stuff with all of the different hyperlinks to those, so that you can go to each of the websites that are there. There's a guide that we've put together, a simple guide on how to do a multi-faith vigil in your community, again, with just ideas, but it's got, probably more information that you need, but sample emails that you can cut and paste, you want sample agendas for planning meetings, that kind of thing. Again, tweak and modify all of this as you see fit, but we wanted you to know there was some good material there for you to work with. And then there's also, for those of you who are on this webinar tonight, you won't need this, but we're having another webinar to cover this same material next Tuesday, December 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can register for that webinar if you'd like. After tonight's webinar, what we'll do is we'll upload a link to the recording for this webinar, so the people who weren't able to join us live will be able to get that. And then there's the link to the People's Climate Movement webpage, which I'll show you, which is right here. And as I said, and right now what you can do is, if you want to be on the People's Climate Movement email list, you can sign up right there. so that we can so that you can get contacted through that. There will be a faith page soon on the People's Climate Movement website, and at that point, all of this stuff will move to that. But right now, that's the list of materials that we've got for you. As we start to get Vigil sites confirmed, we're going to create a public Google Doc, and on that Google document it'll be indexed by state, and you'll be able to look and see where the different vigils are. There will be and who the sort of what their specific location, date, and time is going to be, and there will be the name and the email address of a contact person for each of those vigils. So if you want to get in touch and offer to help or find out more or figure out how you can get involved, you'll be able to contact that person specifically. The People's Climate Movement site that I just pulled up will have a map with all of the different actions taking place during the first 100 hours. So the vigils will be on there, but there will also be other actions that'll be listed on that map as well. So you'll be able to look on a map, and there will also be the link to the Google document that has the listing of the different vigils. One person sent in the question about when does the 100 hours end, and what we figured is it ends on Tuesday the 24th. The vigil, the inauguration is the 20th. Some people start the counting sort of the next day. Some people, so we're figuring through Tuesday the 24th, and the inauguration itself is on Friday afternoon, and so that gives for people of faith, it gives the entire weekend, as well as the following Monday and Tuesday also. So we're encouraging folks to think about those time periods. The large women's march that's taking place in DC will take place on the Saturday. And so we know some folks are waiting till Sunday, as Marcia said, so as not to compete with that. We really think it's, every community is going to know what's the right time for them, and we think that's, that's important. So, at any rate, so I think at this point, that's really, that we didn't have a huge amount of content to cover. In terms of contact information, Estrella Sainberg, who's the Green Faith organizer, is someone who is going to be handling a lot of the contact and outreach around this. Estrella, and I'm going to pull up. Here we go. Estrella is, you can see her the email that we've set up for this, which is vigils@greenfaith.org, so you can contact Estrella. I wanted to mention also that the Franciscan Action Network, whose executive director is Patrick Carolyn, they're also involved, doing a lot of work to get Catholic communities engaged in the vigils, and also in the organizing around the April 29th action. And Patrick's email is there, pcarolyn@franciscanaction.org. I've listed the People's Climate Movement People's Climate Movement website there is peoplesclimate.org, and again, the materials right now are at greenfaith.org. So that's really we really want to encourage folks to go for this. It's really important, and we believe that the faith community is an incredibly important bearer of the message around this important time, and so we're looking forward to working with you all. We will probably do several more calls once we start to get folks identified who are going to be hosting vigils. We'll do conference calls with those folks so that we can get people connected, see what kind of questions people have, see what kind of resources would be useful for us to provide, and do the best that we can. We'll also, if people are planning a vigil in, say, Phoenix, and there's another People's Climate Movement action in Phoenix, we're going to make those connections also so that people can see if it makes sense to coordinate in that kind of way. Another good question came in terms of how long should the vigil be? Given that it's going to be in the middle of January and it's going to be pretty cold in certain parts of the country, and I happen to know the person who sent in this question is from the Chicago area, I would say if you're in Chicago and it's cold, this vigil should be probably about 30 seconds. No, but I think seriously, and I think folks should figure what works best for their context. Take the temperature into account. Take what the setting is. I think a lot of people find that a vigil, if temperature is not a factor, 45 minutes to an hour and a quarter is nice. I think it's always great when there's some singing as well as praying as part of these vigils. I think it's great when there's a time of silence. Candles always bring a really moving kind of dimension to this. And we'll also, I should have mentioned, we'll be developing a social media kit and also have some suggested messages if people want to put them on signs. Make sure you've got someone taking photographs, because we'll set up a way to share photos around this. All of that stuff is really important. Another good question came in about the goals of the vigils and suggesting what about finding common ground with people across the political spectrum. I think that's a great idea. Again, we think that what works best with these kinds of vigils is if folks locally decide how they want to frame the vigil and go for that, and let us know if we can be helpful in terms of messaging. We'll be sharing some messaging developed by the People's Climate Movement. We'll also be sharing some sample faith messaging, because we know that faith messaging very often really needs to be distinguished from sort of secular activist messaging. And we really, we would love to hear how you're planning on framing what the message of your vigil is. And what we'll be doing is, really it helps us to be able to know what that messaging is, so that we can lift up examples of different messaging in the social media feed, and also be sure that the People's Climate Movement, which will be doing a lot of social media work during that first 100 hours, we want to make sure that a lot of different multi-faith vigils get featured in that. So we'll be feeding your messages into that as well, and connecting you all directly with the social media team at the People's Climate Movement as well. So if folks have other questions, now's the time to use the Q&A function to send them in, because we've covered the material that I had wanted to. I think again the most important thing, remember, this is the People's Climate Movement. This is the kickoff of the actions towards the April 29th mobilization. And I should mention that I know that in a lot of places, people are considering coming together during the first 100 hours as a way to symbolically kick off their planning towards the work that they want to be doing towards the April 29th mobilization. And that's absolutely appropriate if you want to have a planning meeting and then conclude that with a time of multi-faith prayer. That's a great way to make use of that time. And it's a nice way to have it be productive in terms of future planning, and also important in terms of the feel of the time together. Good question came in about, are there some cities where vigils have already been planned? You heard from Marcia about the planning that's underway in New York, and we know that we've gotten emails of planning, I think, from about 12 or 13 different communities. We're sorting through the input at this point, and what we'll do is, as soon as we've got a person or people who are willing to be the public point people in different communities, we'll get those names out there. We'll get that Google sheet out there, and make sure that everybody who's registered for this and who's indicated interest will get access to that Google sheet. And the Google sheet, which will be a public document, will be up on the People's Climate Movement website as well. So we hope that by the middle of the next week, we'll be able to share a good starting list of actions, of vigils. Another question came in about whether there are plans for coordinated national PR and news coverage. And the answer is absolutely yes. As you can probably tell, this is something that we're working on in real time. There's a communications team that's going to come together nationally, and a number of faith leaders will come together to think about how we want to manage the specific faith communication around this as part of the larger national communication as well. Great, we just got an email from our friend Karen Burke out on Long Island saying the Sisters of St. Joseph's, who've done great work on climate and environmental issues for a long time, are planning a multi-faith vigil on Long Island. So that's great. And Karen, make sure you email us, so if you haven't already, so that we get the information about where and when, so that we can, as soon as possible, so that we can get that out to folks, and also, share it. I mean, part of what we'll be doing is sharing information about these vigils and where they're happening with folks in different communities, again, to try to connect people up. So, and we know that faith communities are gonna step up on this. I'm not seeing any more questions. Marcia, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Any share another sort of good word from what you've seen happening in terms of the New York process, so to continue to inspire folks?
Well, it's really exciting because a lot of us didn't know each other, and at this meeting there were about 15 people. It was fabulous, people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and I feel that we've formed a real core group of like-minded people who really want to affect change and make a mark and say something and make a powerful statement. We just, all of us left feeling so much stronger, having come together and shared all of our concerns together and having planned this. It makes you feel less helpless and makes you feel more hopeful about the future.
That's great. And I should say also that Green Faith, and in the form of Estrella Sainberg, our organizer, who I mentioned, we're going to be very eager to work with groups who form the vigils to help continue to support and encourage you and help support your organizing towards April 29th, because we think it's a really important opportunity for new faith, local multi-faith tables or hubs to come together around this. And so we're really eager to work with you and to support that. I'm going to give about another sort of 15 or 20 seconds for any other questions to come in, and then we'll let you all go. We figured this would probably last about a half hour, and that's turned out to be true. So not seeing any more questions come in. It's really it's great to be with you all. We really are. Oh, I know, the one, and I just saw Nana Furman, who manages Green Faith's Muslim outreach and engagement, is on the is listening in, and it made me remember that I wanted to mention specifically that one of the reasons that the religious diversity of these vigils is so important is that we need to demonstrate that we care for the earth, for God's creation, and we need to demonstrate that we stand together. We saw very sadly too many times during the political campaign, the presidential campaign, that the president-elect was inappropriately willing to literally throw certain faith communities, certain groups of people under the bus in a way that no faith community recognizes as morally legitimate. And so we need to stand together. And I'd really like to encourage you to say to do what you can to make sure that you get Muslim voices, immigrant voices, women's voices, LGBTQ voices involved in the sort of public leadership of your vigil. Voices of persons of color. We need to make sure that we show how fortunate we are to be part of a diverse community of faith and of the human family. And as Marcia said, we want to be clear that these vigils are and should be designed to be for people of all faiths and people of no faith. This is all about creating a space for people to come together to show that we care and to show that we're united in that care. So Many
Thank you so
thanks.
much, Fletcher. Thank you so much.
And Marcia, thanks to you. This is great, and thanks for inspiring us and showing everybody how this can get done. And I know that you were one of the people who sort of first had this vision for making this happen in New York, and we really appreciate your reaching out to us, and it helped spur along our imagination about how this could happen in a lot of places. So
Thank you.
many thanks, everybody. We'll share materials as we get them. We appreciate your taking the time to be with us, and we look forward to being together in a time of prayer and public witness in the new year. So we will say goodnight for now, and we'll be in touch again soon. So take care, everybody. Be well, and thanks so much for joining us. Goodbye now.
Thank you so much.